And each season that you go through as a beekeeper, you're going to continue to learn, you're going to continue to grow, just as your bees do. We do a little bit of everything here at the Honeystead, but the one thing that we do best is we show love and joy and encouragement to others. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty and learn something old.
What's up, everybody?
That's awesome.
It's always fun to do those intros. Ryan and I have been putting those things together. I guess Greg, you got to get on the action next week. But we'd like to welcome everybody back to a Stream Team Live here. We've got myself, Bruce at Bruce's Bees. Let me see if I can get this figured out. We got Brian over here at Castle Hives, Greg down here from Nature Farm, and of course we have Kaylee from the Honeystead, and her mother has joined us, Bridget. We got a surprise guest. And I wanted her to invite Bridget on here because I've watched some of their recent videos, their live videos, and they just work so well together. And so we thought you guys, it'd be great to have you both on here as guests tonight.
Bruce, I need to stop you though. We can't just point like this because do you remember what Fred said?
The Brady Bunch.
It's almost like the Brady Bunch. So we have to like look down and we got to wave and look over here and we wave over there. See? Exactly. Now we can start.
Well, in this group right here, I'm kind of the sideliner guy. Just got a few hives. I'm trying to do it in addition to my job, and Brian over here is the hobby guy. He's got how many colonies you got now? 4 or 5. Now you're going to try and get it to about 12, right, Brian? This year, is that your goal?
I'm probably going to end up at 12 with the new equipment that I'm getting. Yeah.
And then Greg is going to be able to speak you guys' language because he is a homesteader himself. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. And why don't you guys introduce yourselves a little bit? I think most people probably know who you are, but just in case they don't, why don't you guys tell us about yourselves?
Go ahead, Brian.
No, Kaylee.
Not me. Our guest, Greg.
I got a lag here. Sorry.
Is it a ladies? Well, my name is Kaylee. My mom is Bridget, and my husband and I started our homestead many years ago, moved out here, and this has just been something that we have been extremely passionate about. Bees have been something that I've wanted ever since I was a little girl, and that story goes way back, but long story short, we do a little bit of everything. We garden, we raise our animals. We are trying to be as self-sufficient as possible. On top of that, my mom and my dad recently purchased the property beside us. And so we put our initial farm, the original farm, back together. So we've got a lot of builds that are going to be happening. But the last 2 years, on top of the beekeeping and everything else, my mom and I actually started, we went back to school and we are now herbalists, and we're actually in our apothecary.
That's all the
So if you see a bunch of jars of herbs in the background, a lot of it has been grown and purchased and harvested, and now we're
put to use.
Now we're doing this with the bees.
That's awesome.
That's great. That is something that I know very little about, is the herbal type stuff. So you guys have some solutions, I'm sure, to all that. I've watched a couple of your lives recently, and you've been able to answer just about any question people threw at you. You know, if I got a sore throat, if I'm feeling this, if I feel that, you're able to answer most questions. So everybody out there on this live, if you have any questions, obviously they can't heal you tonight and everything, but if you got a question here, there, we might be able to have them answer a couple of those for you. So, but that's awesome. I'm excited about this. I thought at first, I think when I reached out to you, Kaylee, I said, we'd like to chat about bees. And you said, well, kind of like bees are nice, but I found that I need to diversify. And so then I really started watching more of your videos. I'm like, wow, she's doing a really good thing over there. And so we're glad to have you guys on. So I've noticed that you've been in the bees a little bit the last couple of days. Tell us how your bees are doing.
So far, I believe we went into winter
We were talking about that today.
It was, I think we have 28. It's beef. It's the same thing as chicken math. Yeah. Okay. Like it's a number that ends in ish. Okay. So I'm pretty positive that I have at least 30.
I think that's what we went into.
I'm going to count.
Yeah. I thought it was like 28, 29 ish. Yeah. So
no, I think we're at 30. So, or almost 30.
Yeah. That's how I'm like, I've got about this. Yeah, that's how I'm like, I've got about this many, but I really never know exactly. So got a question here from Walter. It says, have you ever tried to use your propolis tincture to coat the inside of your beehives?
Yes. Well, not the propolis tincture. That's actually that might be something.
That's interesting.
Not coating them, but I do use propolis tincture to coat our throats. We carry it on us quite often. That's like the hidden secret of beekeepers that a lot of people don't realize that byproduct is so medicinal. So instead of throwing it away, tincture it, use it.
Save up all your propolis gumballs, and when you get enough to put, in
I have some
in a jar. You just top it off
it's in there
with an alcohol mixture. Let it sit for 30 days, and when you start to feel,
it can sit even longer,
or forever.
Really?
When you start to feel, congestion or sore throat or antibacterial, antiviral,
microbial. It's all the antifungal even.
It tastes better than bee pollen.
You can drink. It's a little bit of a kick, but it's
you just want
half a dropper full.
About a dropper. So, yeah,
just kind of wash your mouth out.
I have a video. Yeah, but I mean, think about what the bees are using propolis for. They're using it to keep their colony clean, and so the same concept in people. So that's kind of my passion right now, is linking herbal medicine with the medicinal properties for bees as well. So the bees are out seeking these plants, all the volatile oils from certain plants that are growing, and trying to understand and link the two. It might be in the house, actually.
Yeah, I was gonna try to show it to you, but
I
can't find it.
This is one of the things I like about you. I like about you guys' channel is during your lives, like you guys are getting up and going and getting stuff and showing it. I love that. It's fun.
Get excited.
I was trying to show you, but it's actually really neat. And we have out here, we have a lot of different trees that make up and different. So it's curious. I want to get together with people, other beekeepers who are tincturing propolis, and let's swap. Let's see what each other's propolis tastes like.
Last study that I actually found, they can only they can pick as much as 300 different species of tree resins that the bees have actually collected to make their propolis, and it depends on where you're at in the world. So it's kind of crazy to think about.
Wow.
Think about the bees in that way.
So you guys are. I think what I like about what you guys do is the old ways are the new ways, or at least a lot of us are pushing for that. You guys are in tune with a lot of the old time ways of doing things, and I think what's neat about that is you can't be a beekeeper and not see the full picture. How everything is integrated, whether it's your pigs, your cows, your chickens, your garden, your medicine, it's all one picture. And it wasn't really that long ago where the things like you guys do and a lot of us do on the homestead, what was a way of life, not because we necessarily chose that way, that's the way it was to survive. And because of all the folks that came before us who dug in, made all those things happen, it's given us an opportunity to really appreciate that in a different light now versus then. How did you guys get into the old time ways of not only growing and harvesting and making your own medicine, but how did you guys get into this whole thing where you have a complete full picture, a well-rounded circle of life there?
So I think in short, if it feels good, you do it. If it feels right and if it just happens, there's a reason. I'm going to let this kind of be that right now, every little step that we've done and taken along the way has definitely been guided. I think that there is a curiosity towards looking at our history, like our family's history, the lineage, what great-great-grandparents did. But I also think that it is a necessity to be able to slow down and take a step back and actually have more control of what you're doing, whether it's what you're eating, what you're putting into your body. You know, let's face it, this last couple of years have definitely shown a different side of the way of thinking. And so, you know, it's just share what you know, because it's only going to help somebody else out.
Right.
You know, but I think a lot of it has just been, we've just kind of, okay, let's go here. Let's do this. You know, I grew up in the Blue Ridge Mountains.
I'm going to say it. She was feral.
I still am feral.
She grew up running.
Feral.
I mean, I didn't have TV like that. I mean, we had TV, but like I never really watched it. I was outside.
We were outside. We had a little house, and we had what we thought then was big land.
Yeah.
And in the beautiful Appalachia area, my goodness, that's, you know, swimming at lakes and going to waterfalls and climbing trees. And
I was feral. I was 100% feral.
Fishing and
finding ginseng.
Yeah, wild ginseng. And
picking pawpaws. You know, I would come back home, my face was black with blackberries, you know, or purple. You know, so I mean, I think that it's been good. You know, it's been good. And my husband and I both agreed that we wanted to make sure that our kids had basic knowledge of skills. Right. You know,
survival or whatever you want to call it.
I mean, I don't know what category you would put me in, but it's feral. Just feral. I'm category feral. So
that makes sense. Got a question up here about when is the Apothecary grand opening going to be?
That's Thomas.
So it is. No, I love Thomas and Lulu.
Is that who that is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So the next month, we're actually going to start opening up online. So we're going to actually start letting people come in, make an appointment online. And then we're going to, you know, do custom blends and be able to ship it out. I think we're going to allow for like 2-hour sessions per person, because that really gives us the time to sit down and like talk, you know. But after that, I know there's a few more things that we have to do here to allow this place to be, I guess, open for in person. But it's coming. But officially, like next month, we're gonna start seeing people online at least, and then hopefully make products.
We're already making products.
Well, we already making but offer suggestions and see if we can help
the body heal.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. Bruce, we got the yappy.
So Greg,
we missed that.
What do you, Greg, what do you have on your homestead? I started following you on Instagram. I was like, oh, he's a fellow homesteader. So.
Oh, yeah. My wife and I, we kind of moved away from the city and got out to a piece of land. We're kind of modern day back to the landers, many generations removed from farming and agriculture. We have 7 kids that we raised out here and try to get back to the old ways, the simple ways. They're simply complicated, but in a good way. You guys know that. But here at the farm, we started off doing a lot of things, like the, probably basic homestead. A lot of folks that are checking in and watching tonight. My wife keeps a garden. She's, if my wife was alive 100 years ago, she would have probably been burned at the stake for witchcraft and all those kind of things with all the herbal remedy. That's just us. We've got, we're surrounded by beautiful plants that are medicine, food that is medicine, comfrey, you name it. All the plants that you guys know, we really value, love, incorporate in everything from pigs and goats, turkeys, chickens. Bees have been one of those things where it's as we've kind of grown from a homestead to a farm, and grow and kind of developed what works for us and what is sustaining not only financially but physically, bees have been a massive part of that. So now we've grown the bee business to where we have, I'm not even sure how many colonies, a lot, but we saw nukes and queens. It is. Yeah. It's one of those things. It's, you know, with the homesteading and farming, it was fun to try all those things. You know, at some point, you know, you find certain things like guineas are loud and noisy and they're up at 3 o'clock in the morning and they're chirping at your window, and you find out that they're delicious. And sometimes goats, you can't keep them in any kind of a fence. If you can throw a bucket of water through it, it won't hold a goat. So we found, well, the only fence that will hold a goat's a freezer, and that's a win-win. It's just, you know, one little thing develops after another, and you kind of find your niche, and you find really what you love, and you find some things are, you know, cause you a little bit more trouble than others. But we've just kind of enjoyed really trying everything, and kind of seeing what fits. And then you guys know, once you put yourself out there and you kind of get in tune with nature, you get in tune with all the things that are surrounding you, a lot of things and opportunities just kind of present themselves as you make yourself available and you put out that positive energy towards it. And bees are just one of those things to where it's just, that's for us, that's the main focus. But the hard part about that is when you go from homestead to farm scale, there's sometimes something that happens where you all of a sudden you're always kind of biting off more than you can chew and eating it cold. That's probably every homesteader's motto. You guys know that. But sometimes you get to a point to where you want to put so much effort and you're so passionate about a certain aspect on the farm that a lot of the other things in the periphery are not getting the attention that they need. So you start pulling those things back and focusing. So I miss having a lot of the other animal diversity around, but right now we're literally down to 4 Jersey milk cows. At the max last year was about 200 colonies, a bunch of chickens, and just the mainstays, garden chickens. But it's a lot of fun to do it as a family, as you guys know, to build this thing up and to pass this on to the kids. And then we're blessed and lucky enough to be able to share this with YouTube, share this with our podcast, share this with folks who can kind of tune in. And not that we don't want anyone to look at us like we know what we're doing, but we can pass along some of these harder lessons learned and encourage folks to try it, get out there and get started. And I love that's your guys' channel. You guys do the same thing. It's positive. You're trying to support folks. You're sharing what you're doing and not acting like you're the leading expert in anything. You're just, here's what we're doing. Here's how. And you're gifting folks with that knowledge. And like you mentioned earlier, where we are with society and economics, the whole 9 yards, we're getting really far away from those old time ways. And so I really appreciate what you guys do. Yeah. And you guys are literally sitting in front of a homestead apothecary. I mean, that's beautiful, you know? So
yes.
All right. I watched Kaylee's video today about the top 5 things new beekeepers need to know. So this person is asking that exact question. Kaylee, do you have some ideas on that? What do you think?
Oh, how long ago?
Nothing like putting you on the spot.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
I know one.
Which one?
I would say one of the top things, don't go into beekeeping and only think that you're going to have one hive. If you're going to do the beekeeping, I would strongly encourage at minimum 2 hives to start with, so you can balance if you need to, you know, you can balance a little bit, you can gauge, you can see, and the bees are different within themselves. So you could be doing the same thing to both hives and they're going to respond a little differently on their own. So I would always encourage to have 2 to start with, and then make sure that you have necessary supplies so that when they do start to split or you do need to make changes, you can make those changes readily available. I see a lot of people go into beekeeping with a basic, 1 hive, 1 colony thing, and they think that's all they need. And I think, my personal opinion, I think it's a strong shortcoming to tell somebody that's just enough.
Right.
So that would be my first, most important, one of my first important things to know.
I'll add to that. I think that a lot of beekeepers, a lot of people, when you're getting started into beekeeping, you are focusing so much on the terminology, on the equipment, on all the things, you know, like all of the structural things that you're going to need to get into beekeeping. But I have found, by doing workshops and helping educate and helping teach people, and I'm hoping I've got in the next 10 days, I'm hoping, or a couple of days, I'm hoping to actually have my first e-course launched, hopefully. But nice. I think that if you learn what the bees are doing,
right,
it's going to make you a better beekeeper. Yes, it's good to know the equipment. It's good to know the terminology. But if you take the time to actually learn what they're doing, and it might take you a year or two, and that's okay. You know, they are your best teacher. And at some point, no matter how many books you pick up and you read, you're going to put that book down and you're going to learn from them, because they're going to tell you, like, you're going to be able to pick up frames, inspect them, and read your colony like a book. So I would say to let them kind of teach you. Take pictures of when you're doing your hive inspections, you know, and basically keep that as a log. If you don't recognize what's happening right there, take that picture and, you know, study it, read it, you know, figure it out, and then go back to it when you're ready. But that's, I mean, honestly, I feel like learning what the bees are actually doing is definitely going to make you a good beekeeper. And then also be easy on yourself. You know, don't be hard on yourself. Oh, I have lost many bees. I've lost many colonies. I know a lot of people who lose and then they get to a point where they're just done, you know, and I had a little, like a moment, you know, while I was laying in bed crying after my first colony that I lost.
First three.
And I realized, you know, am I a failure?
No.
And the answer is, what are the bees doing? You know, if you take it back and you look at beekeeping in the simplistic, you know, mindset of the bees are there to help pollinate. I didn't fail because they did pollinate. I might not have been able to keep them as long, but I didn't fail, you know? So be easy on yourself. But yeah, it's awesome adventure.
Yeah, it's interesting that question came up because I did a video recently, the top 5 things. And so those are great points. A couple things I had too was, first of all, I think it's important to find good mentors and friends. And that's going to change a little bit as you get more experience. Like at the beginning, you just need someone to show you what a beehive is like on the inside, to just teach you what the queen looks like, and just to kind of go through it with you. But as you kind of advance and become more experienced, then you can kind of learn from people on YouTube. You can go to the bee club. You can find people more experienced. And the interesting thing is, another point of mine was there's so many different methods to do it, different ways. It's like, you know, kind of like when you decide, and it can change from year to year. Like you said, if you don't just give up if something happens, it is a commitment. That's another point. And then it's also very addictive. And so, but those are just some things that I talked about, you know. And I think another thing that's really important for people that are looking at getting into it is that it's important to feed and treat as you need to. And I know everybody has their own philosophy on that, but when you're a brand new beekeeper, it's kind of like livestock. You know, if you know, there are treatment-free beekeepers, but they've spent years developing that skill. And so if you're a brand new beekeeper, you buy a couple of beehives or catch a couple of swarms, you stick them in boxes, and then you just leave them alone and don't do anything with them, there's a very good chance they'll get diseases and mites and they'll die. And then you'll be frustrated and you may quit. So be prepared to feed and treat. And then as you develop your skills, you might want to delve into some different things. But those are kind of some good things I would recommend as well. Awesome stuff. There was a question up here. If I could find it. Go ahead.
Beekeeping is definitely the ultimate. It's the ultimate experiment. You know, you can do everything right, textbook, and then, you know,
lose them,
you know, or
Absolutely.
You can do everything wrong and they're going to be fine.
And it's so variable depending on where you live. I mean, the bee basics are the same. You've got queens, you got drones, you got workers. They build comb and they do certain things, but so much of it depends on the external environmental factors. You know, you got beekeeper errors and techniques, but you also have a lot of things going on in the environment that can just take your bees out that you may not have any control over. And so people just have to realize that's one thing I love about, but I also get very frustrated by that as well. Got another question here from Australia, which is awesome to have someone in from clear down there, down under. Wondering about the best way to get bees without buying them. Over here, they're mostly $200. Any tips? What do you think about that, Kaylee?
Catch them.
Any ideas?
100%.
Catch them.
There's fun. I mean, honestly, if you have a good, I would definitely see if you can get some old nasty comb, like old drawn out, just like the nastiest comb ever. Not too nasty. But anyways, you can set up traps. You can set up traps, or, you know, put yourself out there. I know when in swarm season for me, it's nothing for me to get multiple calls a day. Where people, I get to the point where I have to ask people, hey, do you want these bees? I'm going to go catch them, you know? So put yourself out there. You know, I'm sure that there's exterminators that are in your area. And I'm assuming it's called exterminators in Australia as well. But basically you can contact the exterminators and say, hey, I want to get bees. If you ever get calls, you know, here's my number. But basically putting yourself out there, or, you know, setting up swarm traps. But I think out of all of our colonies that I think I've only bought 4 nukes. If I really sit down, no, 7. 7 nukes. First year. I've only bought 7 nukes. And I have everything. I've never bought a package. That's, you know, something that I'm glad I never did. My personal opinion. But we get up to around 50. And that's kind of, I'm thinking I'm probably going to get to around at least 60.
I think this year.
If not more, depending on how well, you know, we do. But, you know, catching bees, putting yourself out there, they're there. You know, you just got to put in a little bit of work.
Yeah, if you live near somebody who also keeps bees, just keep an eye around trees and fence posts, because you might be able to catch a swarm that way as well.
Yeah.
So if you get to them before somebody else, if they're on your property, it's helpful.
Yeah.
I got a question for you guys. As you talked about earlier about, you know, crying over the colony, we've all done that. It doesn't matter how big and tough we are. We've all done that, especially when you set yourself up to, you sometimes look at it as a direct reflection on you. And a lot of times it is, but you have to kind of work through all that. I wondered, you know, when you get to that point, there's a lot of beginning beekeepers on here, you know, experiencing loss is a part, I think is a part of the whole thing. And I think sometimes the bees are always teaching us something. And it seems like bees are the universal humbling mechanism, because as soon as you think too much of yourself or how you're doing a certain thing, you're humbled. But I wondered, you know, as you guys have gone through your beekeeping journey and you're growing and finding out what works for you, when you do experience loss, what have you found to help maybe mentally get you work through that to get to the sunny side of life with that? And then secondly, do you have any hard lessons learned in beekeeping that you want to pass on to the folks that are listening?
I always look at life, especially on a homestead. I mean, having animals, you know, if you have livestock, you have dead stock. You experience all the emotions, and I mean, it is the most real feeling in the world to experience loss, no matter what it is. But for me, sometimes those harder moments here on the homestead, they have definitely made the moments that are good, you know, 10 times better. you know, so there's a level of appreciation that you gain from those moments that will make you feel, you know, worthless. You know, let's just face it. I mean, my first colonies, the first colonies that we lost, I'm, you know, doing the autopsies and I'm breaking it down and I'm bawling my eyes out, you know, because I'm like, my little babies. And then finding the queen, you know, in the ball, in the little cluster, you know, it killed me. But, you know, yes, you get to a point where those moments of real feeling make you just appreciate the good days so much better. You know, and that's just
this last year
we've learned.
This last year, I tell you, I had that humbling moment, you know, and you know, this past spring, there was like a 2-month gap where it was the first time in almost 5 years that I had no bees. And when I found them and I was going hive to hive, checking them, and they were just all gone. And I was just like, you know, it floored me, but I just took it as a time where, well, I had to learn, you know, I had to really look at what I was doing and was there anything that I could do better for them? You know, so I took that experience, you know, those, you know, new beekeepers, if you find yourself in that situation, don't beat yourself up because you can take that situation and you can do like what I did and you can learn and just move forward and then you're a better beekeeper, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And just being that inspiration to another beekeeper. I think that a lot of people are afraid to admit their, you know, failures. I don't want to say failures, but I think a lot of people, especially people who are on YouTube, okay, they don't want to share the bad, you know. I mean, because you're on YouTube, you're supposed to be this know-all expert. At least, you know, that's what a lot of people think. But, you know, I think that sharing the good, the bad, the ugly, you know, it's so much more valuable than trying to act like you know everything, because everything constantly changes with the bees. Right. Tomorrow is going to be 60 degrees. The next day we're going to get, you know, I think we might get like 6 inches of snow, you know, so there's so many things that are constantly changing and you have to be fluid. You can't be so stationary. You can't be so textbook, especially as a beekeeper. You can pick up the book and read it, but you have to put it down and you have to be able to adapt and learn with them and, you know, make changes throughout. Accordingly.
I had a quick question from Ian. He was asking me, I do have some colonies out in California, just a few, like 48. I put on a truck with some friends. And to answer your question, Ian, they're, as far as I know, they're doing well. I think our colony's graded out really well. And I'm eager to see how they look when they come back. Jose has been in, he's told me that the area where my bees are, he has bees there as well. And so he's not keeping an eye on ours, but he is kind of keeping me posted as far as the bloom and things with the almonds. And so it's kind of exciting. But we'll see how they come back. Another question there.
If I treat, so if I need to treat, this is from Mark. If I need to treat, I switch it up. I've used oxalic acid. I'll do dribble method. I've done the vaporizing method. Actually, Brian and I were actually just talking about that. The vaporizer that he has, which is a heck of a lot better than the one that I have.
Yeah, that one looks fun.
That is kind of cool. And then really, you know, the other thing that we did use Formic Pro this last season. But you know, if I have to, and that's the thing, it's hard because it's like so many people are like, oh, treatment free or not. I am come to the conclusion as a beekeeper that, or anything here on the farm, or even myself, if they need my assistance, I'm going to step in and do what I have to do, you know, and I would do it with my livestock. I'm not going to say, I would love to be treatment free, but there are other apiaries around our farm, within a 5-mile radius. And so I do try to see what they're doing, because our bees are all, intermixed. So building that community and knowing what they're doing, but switching it up, I think is key. I do think is key. So
I think it's important I think it's important if you have bees. I mean, we're merely just trying to be good stewards. Yeah. They're going to do what they're going to do, but there is some parts that we have to do to be able to be,
I prefer to do a lot of brood breaks. I mean, I prefer to do a lot of splits, let them, have a brood split opportunity. Basically, breaking up the brood cycle.
But we don't just treat just to treat either. No. We do feel it's important to do a mite count and see what your numbers are, know what your numbers are going into it. Don't just treat.
I heavy split last spring. We heavy split. And our state inspector came out and we checked, I don't know how many, I think we did
5.
No, it was 12. I think we checked 12 of our colonies and did mite counts, and we had a 0 mite count. So that was good, but of course we're ramping up with the actual colony, ramping up with the bees, and the varroa mite load is a little bit lower. So that threshold is a little bit easier now, come fall. Kaylee's mom, do you suit up?
I have to. I have to suit up.
They sting the crap out of her.
I get venom therapy almost every time I'm working with the bees. So
wow.
And I don't. Usually it's only one. Not necessarily every time. We have a couple of hives that I don't care what you're doing. I don't care who you are. Even Kaylee has gotten stung from them.
They love my husband.
I've nicknamed, we've had 2 hives that I have nicknamed bananas. And that's simply because the second you even crack that hive, you smell the bananas.
And you're just like,
I put the lid down and I try to walk away, but they're already out following me. So, I do believe in
but they're the best colony. They're the best colony.
They're the honey producers.
They're so amazing.
So I do believe in suiting up, though, for me.
Yeah.
For anybody else, do what you feel comfortable. I don't personally like to get stung, so I try to avoid it.
I get stung, yes. But for me, like if I suit up, I mainly suit up, and I've had, I guess, being out there on YouTube, you're going to get opinions. And one of the big things is I want to show people like it's okay to wear a suit and gloves. Like you don't have to be gloveless or suitless. It's not going to make you any better of a beekeeper. Yeah. But a lot of the beekeepers that watch me are beginning, so I don't want to show them a false sense of reality. And I want to show them like, hey, and I've shown a couple of my colleagues that have been, to the point where it was intense. My camera was being bombarded, and, I had to do some things to my camera to basically stop the bees from attacking it, like remove the little dead cat thing. They didn't like those.
They love those, don't they? Gosh.
Tell us about your custom hive tools, Kaylee.
I wish I could. Well, Brian has one. So yes, we do. Outside of all of the other homesteading stuff, my parents they own a business where they do a lot of. Oh, look, they're there. My parents own a business. And they do a lot of different types of coating, not just like for house paint or anything like that. It's
very diversified.
Yes, we do powder coating, we do liquid coating, Cerakote, which the hive tools are actually all Cerakoted. Cerakote
that's an amazing coating.
Oh, it's such a durable coating, and it was actually an accident. that the company basically accidentally created this product, but we do a lot of firearms as well. So out of fun, I was like, hey, let's do some hive tools, like, yes, I was the first one to get a Tiffany blue firearm.
Yeah.
So
it's not her fault. See, that's
anyways, so we started custom doing some hive tools, and it's been fun. Right now, the ones that are out are all I think there's some American flag ones. There's some leopard print ones if anybody is interested in leopard. So I'm still waiting for the big burly man to buy the leopard print hive tool. That would be fun.
You never know.
But yeah,
we do have some. For the knife makers, we have some Damascus looking ones.
Yeah. And then I think I've got a couple other ideas and designs we'll be putting up. And I have been approached on by some companies who want to order bulk of their design for their. So we're gonna maybe start working on doing something like that so that they can have their own custom line. Yeah. So it's fun, but some of those as well.
I can add for anybody that's watching, I ordered my first hive tool, and mine now I don't know if there's any other ones that are like this, but mine actually says Castle Hives down the hive tool. It is still that was special. I know, but that hive tool, if I clean it off, it looks exactly like it did the day I got it. The coating that is on that tool, I've used it for, I think, 2 years. I've used it, I think, 2 seasons. It's great. So as far as the durability of them, you will not go wrong.
I need some Blaze orange hive tools because I lose all the time.
No, all right, let's do it.
Do you have any Blaze orange? Okay, that's what we need. That'd be cool.
We can do it.
All right.
I've also got a like a lime green, or that
hive is
zombie.
Yeah,
green. It's called zombie. So
nice.
It's such a dork. Yeah, we can do some bright orange ones for you. Some Blaze orange. We did do some military hive tools, military inspired hive tools, and one of the requests was the military OD green. And I was like, man, it looked so good, but I know they're going to lose that.
I lose my bright red.
Yeah.
What are you guys most excited about on the homestead right now? What's I know the spring's coming. Down where you guys are, it's already probably flirting. You're probably are the spring peepers starting to chime up yet, or are you still a little ways off from spring?
A little bit.
For here, I think our biggest thing, I am ready to plant some stuff. Yeah. Like it is taking everything inside of me to not plant like 200 tomato plants like I do, because apparently I have an issue with tomato plants. But I'm excited to actually, really honestly, I'm
back in the dirt.
That and get into the colonies. I am really excited to start doing some inspections again.
Yeah.
For all the folks that are listening, that are really just excited to get into their gardens too, they would probably, some of us kind of nerd out on seed saving. I'm sure you guys with such a long history of homesteading, you guys probably have some pretty cool heritage family passed down seeds, don't you?
Yeah.
What's some of your favorite family heirlooms?
Yes, tomatoes, but actually I'm going to tell a little bit about Renew.
Oh yeah.
So okay. my step grandmother, she's basically, she's from Thailand, and she moved to the United States. I don't know how many, probably 40 years ago, 40 years ago. She brought over some of her seeds that, she has been able to continue to grow. So I have all of her seeds that she has saved over the years, and all of her herbs. The galanga, it's like a ginger,
turmeric,
the turmeric, kaffir lime, the kaffir lime leaves,
lemongrass,
so all of that. So that's probably, I think, our most prized, is everything that she has brought over from Thailand, and she's kept these plants alive this entire time. Like, she's continued to grow.
And her peppers.
Yeah. Oh, her peppers. She has. Yeah. She's like 4 foot something, very small, and she picks a fight with my grandpa, who's like 6'3", and then she goes out and takes care of her peppers, because the meaner she is, the hotter her peppers are. That's Thai tradition. Like this big, and she's picking a fight.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But
yeah.
Hey,
and I think also too. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say also too, what I'm really excited about this year, as far as planting goes, we have acquired a lot of herbs that are from medicinal herbs and seeds, and I'm really looking forward to being able to see if we can get them, like transplant them from the mountain area where she grew up at. And so it's still within the county, but just a little different area, still trying to bring them and transplant them over here.
Like Solomon seal and
pawpaws.
Pawpaw, Solomon seal. The cohosh, a lot of cohosh.
Black and blue cohosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would love to see if I can transplant some of the ginseng, but I'm a little nervous. I might just try to save some seeds and start that way.
Do you guys do anything with, I'm sure you do, things like marshmallow, comfrey?
Yep.
Yep.
I got a whole bunch of it.
I bet
comfrey root. I've got, the wormwood. It's part of the wormwood family, but it's the Artemisia annua, though. That variety, that one has been a big one on the radar, especially with all the viruses and the flus and everything. They've put out some pretty interesting literature with not the other Artemisia, it's the Sweet Annie is the variety. Yeah. So I just geeked out, went herbal. Sorry.
Well, that's the cool thing about it is so many of those herbs on a homestead can be used so many different ways. Wormwood for even for pigs or worms, intestinal type things. Comfrey, but with 7 kids, I swear every time there's a brand new trampoline, somebody has something busted up. Cats with ligaments, so many comfrey poultices and things like that are so valuable. And one thing we used to hang up our comfrey a lot. We usually did have Bocking 4 and 14 here on hand, and some true comfrey, but we would hang it up in the woodshed, dry it out. And if anyone's listening as a beekeeper, I'm not saying do this. I'm not saying it's going to take care of your mite problems, but comfrey is super high in oxalic acid.
No. Yeah, that I was going to say it's really
makes
very
great
close
smoker
to the
fuel.
spinach.
Yep.
Yeah.
It makes great smoker fuel.
We'll add thyme, some dried thyme, and oregano too, as well, because of the volatile oils. It has thymol in it. It's the same additive, which is what's in Apivar. So definitely. That's my. Let me see if I have where's my book at? It's over here. No, it's over here.
I don't know.
Hey,
Thomas says, plus, don't the bees love comfrey? That's true. You guys sound way smarter than I am about it. But if you've ever watched comfrey, especially Bocking 4 or 14, it just it blooms for most of the year. And you'll see the bees not necessarily in the trumpet of the flower, but up underneath between the petal and the flower. And they're up there foraging like crazy all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm always seeing bees up on the comfrey in between I don't know if there's some nectar behind in between there, or if it's other minerals that they're going after. But they're going to town on that.
I mean, that's connecting the beekeeping, because this apothecary, we call it the beekeeper's apothecary. We figured that would be the perfect name for what we're doing, because everything, I mean, even to salve making for bee stings, you know, teaching people like all the things that you can do. But one of my projects that I've been working on and trying to figure out a proper way to put this out is this is my kind of my little hidden secret that I've been kind of collecting in little articles, but looking at all of the byproducts of bees. Okay, so we know honey. Honey is amazing for bee stings. It's awesome for burns, you know, sore throats, anything like that. All the medicinal properties of honey. But then also looking at beeswax. This is just a little tidbit. A lot of people, if you have watched, I've talked about this in the past, but my schooling, my education, where it's led me to a career, I worked in an operating room as a surgical first assist. So I did a lot of spine, I did ortho, you know, all of that. But in surgery, we'll use a sterilized bone wax, which is actually beeswax, to help your bone to stop bleeding. So it's used every single day. So just looking at the beeswax and how amazing all the byproducts of honeybees, and how you can use them. So basically, I've kind of put together a whole little book, and I'm still adding on to it, but even like talking about the propolis, and then looking at the plants, doing my research and understanding why are these plants good. You know, you're going to see a list of all these things that you can plant for your bees, but they don't really necessarily go into detail to why they're actually good for the bees. So my study, where I've kind of been drawn to, is plant medicine, not just for us, but for the bees, which leads to the thymol, which leads to the thyme. You know, that is what's in Apivar. So kind of connecting those dots, and then even looking at the trees, right, which is the propolis, all the tree resin. You know, so basically, this is what happens to me. I get excited, and then I'm like, we're going to learn everything. So, but I think one of my favorite things that I've recently kind of been studying about is looking at elderberry as well. Not just for yourself, but for the bees. And what is my litter? What did it say? It was how many an acre of elderberry trees can produce 800 pounds of pollen for your bees. Like your bees will gather
an acre
an acre of elderberry. Like an acre of elderberries can produce that much pollen. So anyways,
it's a heavy producer.
I'm still it is. It's a heavy producer. And then it's good for you. You know, you can do so much. The flour, you can add the flour to your tea. It'll bring on a fever, which is good if you're trying to fight something. The elderberry itself, I mean, there's been a huge push for elderberry syrups. We infused elderberry honey. You know, and it tastes amazing, and you know, it's gorgeous. But anyways,
have you ever fried the flowers? Have you ever made fritters with the flowers?
Yes, we have.
Okay, you're in the cool kids club. Okay, cool. Not many people have had that. That's super good.
Yeah.
Hey, we were
going for it. Oh, are we wrapping up on time? Where are we at?
No, we're not wrapping up. We're not wrapping up yet. Not unless you guys need to go. We do need to take a little break here. We have Brian has a. Just take away, Brian. We have a giveaway we want to do there.
I'm going to have Rob. He's got a comment ready to go. Just Rob, hit enter. Okay. Hit enter, and I'll highlight his. There we go. So super excited about the spin tonight. What Rob is doing is, and he has a video out on this, he has equipment that they're no longer going to sell, and he's basically donating this equipment to clubs. He has right there, for the clubs to get onto the wheel, it has to be like a president, somebody that has like a board position. That way, he can ensure that these gifts go to, the actual club. I have a video here that Rob sent me. Let me share that. And we're going to see a nice video here. Nice equipment.
Look how professional you make us look, Brian. This is like,
no, this was Rob.
This is like, look at you guys. I'm impressed.
It's almost like we're professionals.
You're making me and Bruce look good, and we're ugly. We need all the help we can get. Sorry, Bruce.
See? Now what I need to do, watch
That's
this.
That's great.
Let's see here. We got to add. Let's see here. Look at this now.
Oh, look at that.
Wheel. And it even has the Laura B's logo in the middle.
Man.
So everybody, if you're wondering, he makes this awesome vaporizer here.
If his mom's listening, Brian, she's gonna thump you next time she sees you. It's Larabi's. Get it right, man.
I know.
She carries a big stick.
I can get thumped.
I've been on the wrong side of it.
This right here, though. So Rob, write this down because I'm spinning and I'm doing these things. I'll forget. So, but here we go. This is the first giveaway here for one of these beekeeping clubs. Let's see who it is. Watch, there's even going to be like fireworks. Watch this. Who is it? There we go. Anne Arundel Beekeepers Association.
Wow. It's like the 4th of July in February.
I'm telling you.
America.
Go.
That's pretty cool.
That is. That's technology. That's why I'm glad that Brian is a co-host, because I would have no idea how to do that.
Me either. No way.
Yeah.
I was a little. Brian did about 4 or 5 of those on one of his that he was hosting, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do that? And then we found out that he could be a co-host on my channel. I'm like, dude, you can do all that fancy technology stuff, and I'll just talk. And
this is the only reason why they have me on, is so that I can do stuff like that and pull up websites.
Tell everybody.
He's taught me everything about the StreamYard. It has opened up all kinds of opportunities for us. We really enjoyed it. But
that's it.
That's the truth.
Isn't that the way it's supposed to work? We all work together, right?
Yes.
You're better at that than another person. Fantastic. Yep. So now we know who to do to get the spin wheel.
A little spinning thing. Yeah. Yeah.
So I just want to encourage everybody. We've had some people on here, a lot of people on this chat. I know Cayman's been on here. Ian was on here for a while. We've had Yappy on here. I'm not sure if they're all still on here or not. We really appreciate everyone who's come on here. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask Kaylee and or Bridget, feel free to put them in the comments so we can get that taken care of. And we'll go ahead and continue on. I really know nothing about the herbal stuff except I know it's good. So I've already learned some things tonight. It was watching your 2 or 3 lives that I've seen. I'm like, man, I never heard of that before, but it sounds like pretty good stuff. So I can learn a lot from you guys. Now, you mentioned Kaylee earlier. I think that Brian, go ahead.
No, I was going to say what I learned the other day is moving forward, we are not going to listen to the groundhog. We are going to listen to the longhorn.
The longhorn.
To see if the longhorn sees its shadow.
Tell us about your longhorns. Do you have a bunch of those? Tell us about your longhorns, Kaylee. Do you have a lot of those?
We have 4 now with the baby. We got
3.
Well, the British,
4, 5,
so the white
6.
ones, the white cows that I have, they said they were longhorn, but I had somebody come out and kind of educate me a little bit. but it's a British white. So technically we actually have 4 Longhorns, 2 that are babies, and then I've got a British white cow, and then my bull, and then we're getting ready to have another baby.
Possible.
Another baby probably in the next couple of days or weeks, and then
Reba.
It's a number ending in ish. I'm just kidding. It's really not. So I do love the Longhorn though. I love the Longhorn. They can be really intimidating and scary looking, but they're really not. We chose Longhorn because I am like 5'2", and I don't want to have to pull a calf. And so I did my reading about cows that tend to have smaller calves that grow fast. And Longhorn was actually the main one. And so I shared my husband, and he was like, let's go get her. So, but I love Longhorn. They're majestic looking. And yes, I'm hoping that she'll be able to predict the winter. So, but yeah, one day I'd love to have a dairy cow, maybe one day. So Greg, I'm going to have to pick your brain on dairy cows.
I've got 4 that we really need to. We've loved them. They've been great, but we're just one of the things that we've accepted. We just don't have the time to do what we want to do with them. So we're looking. There's 4 beautiful Jersey girls. Just waiting. So just you say the word, we'll bring the trailer down.
We have a question I asked for questions, and we've gotten a few here. So maybe do some rapid fire on some questions. Okay. How do you prefer to split a hive, you guys, Kaylee and Bridget?
Easiest way is a walk away. I feel like a walk away split is probably the easiest way. But
that takes the longest too.
You can get a queen if you want to add a queen that's already mated. I have done that. We've added a couple of mated queens, but in all honesty, I really like the fact that our bees are mutts. And I like the fact that because all of our bees are pretty much swarms, and we've got a couple of bees that we've had the same lineage now for years. And they've all been one from a colony cutout that was inside a house for 25 years.
Never treated,
never touched, nothing. And so we did a whole colony cutout. And then from that one, I think we at least have 8, if not more, those genetics. But honestly, I prefer, splitting, doing like a walk away split, but I prefer to let my bees create their own queen, just because they know best.
So when you do your walk away splits, do you like to have cells in those colonies first, or do you just do it with eggs? Do you have a preference on that? Or?
Eggs. It depends. If I see a cell, and if it's a swarm cell, then I will do that. If it's just a cell, sporadically put anywhere, no, I don't, because the bees know what they're doing. Like if it's an emergency or a super procedure situation, no, that stays. But I prefer eggs and do a split and let them, make their own queen. If I see a swarm cell, I will 100% split that. Just because they're going to swarm anyways. And then I'm going to go have to check them and catch them.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
Sometimes I think that's one of the coolest things about beekeeping is there's so many ways to do things. And just for those who might be a brand new beginner, a walk away split is basically just that. You have to make sure you have the proper resources in both hives or colonies. You don't even have to worry about finding the queen really, as long as you know you've got at least eggs in both colonies, some brood and some food. And you can just kind of split those frames up and move them, and they'll both the hive that is queenless will make their own queen. Theoretically, it does work well most of the time. Every once in a while, it doesn't, but it's just I've had some real good success with those as well. I actually kind of prefer it if I like I'm going to be starting really soon down here in Alabama. I haven't seen any queen cells yet, but I know we're close, and so in the past I've tried to prevent swarming and tried to keep them in the hives, and this year if I see swarm cells, I'm going to split them, I think, and just kind of break them down, try and get the queen, actually move the queen away, because then I think that kind of helps her maybe feel like she's swarmed already, and then just try to, and I think I need to build my numbers back up. I lost a few this year. So that's kind of my goal. I also like doing cells, splitting with cells, queen cells, if you can get a hold of those. And then I do some mated queens as well. I'm going to get some from Greg this year. Greg's been talking about, Greg and Brian have both been bragging on Greg's queens. And so we're going to find out how they do in the South. We're going to find out how they do in the South. I'll put it that way. But I've heard really good things about his queens. So I'm going to try some from him, and also some. I've already ordered some from Jose down in California.
I check my bees in the summertime in shorts and a t-shirt and a veil. So, and that's his bees.
So, that's awesome.
So
it's hard to beat a swarm. So as we sell bees and queens, and of course we'll ship them to anybody. But for everyone in their backyard, I just, the most beautiful queens in the world that you will ever see is the vibe from a queen that comes from your yard, on your pollen, nectar, everything in your exact area, coming from the queen cells that the bees themselves made. You can't beat it. You just can't beat it.
Yeah, I agree.
Go ahead, Kaylee.
I was going to say I've introduced mated queens that were not, from, and they fizzle out. They, from my experience, but I also, like I said, most of our bees are swarms or splits and rescues. So they are, essentially feral.
One of the most frustrating things to me is if you order, say, just throw the number out, 10 queens from a reputable bee, a queen breeder, or a really big queen breeder from somewhere, wherever it is, and you get them, and 3 of them blow it out, do really well. 3 of them are average, and then the rest of them are just fizzle out. That is very frustrating when you can pay that kind of money. So I do believe it's just good to kind of mix it up a little bit. This is a question from our friend Sebastian over in the UK. He has stayed up late tonight. He may work nights, but I'm not sure if he's working tonight. And I assume this means that, did you ever make wine from elderberry? Is that what that means? I assume so. Yeah. A question for you.
I have not made wine from elderberries. That is on my list. Like, I would like to do. I've had elderberry wine before. I've actually had a dandelion elderberry wine that was so good. It was like the perfect flavor. I haven't made it, but I would definitely love to give that a shot. I might not get anything else done if I'm enjoying it. I might just, forget about everything else.
Have you guys made mead? You've got to have, on a homestead, you've probably at least made mead.
I have not made mead.
Not yet.
I've had mead. Well, so here's the thing. I don't like mead.
It's got a thing. It's.
I try. I know. I want to like it, but
it's got a weird thing. It's completely different. Yeah. If there's been a lot of questions about making mead, mead is extremely easy. The Vikings would literally take either a living hive or a dead out and just literally put it in a vat that would hold water and add water. And that's it. Let it get funky, do its thing. And that was mead. But it's so easy to make mead, these days that, basic recipe is 3.5 pounds of honey, a gallon of water, 1 packet of Lalvin 1118 champagne yeast. And then in about 30 days, you have something that's drinkable. And in a year, you have something that's really nice. But mead has a certain, what's the word? It's got a certain funk to it. It's got a certain thing going on that it can put people off.
I like those IPAs and all that, so that's fine.
Totally.
That's fine with me.
It's got a mixed vapor rub kind of a thing going on with mead, no matter which way you do it. Oh yeah, there you go. Hops.
We've got
hops. Oh wow.
That's what you need right there. That's probably the
We're actually drinking. We're drinking hops. Hop tea. It's a little bitter, but we added in some California poppy, some Tulsi, some oat
You'll sleep good.
Motherwort, chamomile. Oh yeah, we're gonna be tranquilized here in the next.
Here's a question from Brown. Go ahead. Here's a question from Brownie's Bees. It's about swarm traps. Swarm traps. Have you had any issues with wax moths getting into the comb before the bees arrive?
No, I haven't. It depends on how much comb. So if you take that wax and you don't if you don't put the whole chunk of comb in it, I only use like a little bit to lure them in. They that smell. But if you can take that comb and you can like rub it on the inside of your swarm trap, basically like letting the smell get in to where the wax moths can't actually, there's nothing there. That I found has helped because I have had, a little bit to where the wax moths has, I guess I should have corrected that. Yes, I've had a little bit of an issue with the wax moths in a swarm trap, but I found that if you take the comb and you rub it on the inside of your swarm trap, that the pheromones will still be able to kind of transfer and they'll be able to be attracted to that. And that might help.
Okay. I found too, I really like to use Swarm Commander. I know a lot of people use lemongrass oil. I've caught, I don't know how many swarms using lemongrass or Swarm Commander, but if you just use drawn comb, I've had some hives like they'll die out or the bees will abscond or whatever. I just leave it sitting there, go back and the bees, there's new bees in there because they just love that old comb, that old hive smell, so that's awesome. Trying to see if we got any more questions coming up here.
I'm going to actually try this year to catch a swarm or two. So I'm actually going to try it.
Do it.
Who knows?
So
it's a rush. It's a rush for sure. You go out there and you see bees flying in and out. Sometimes it's just scouts, but you can tell when you've caught them because they look like they're on a mission. They're bringing pollen in. It is a rush. It really is a cool thing, a cool feeling.
It's my favorite. I saw my first swarm last year. I was actually working in my garden, and our neighbor across the street has a colony in her porch. And I don't know if they came from there or not, but I was working in the garden, and I heard the buzz, and I knew right away, and I'm looking, I'm like, all right, where is it? Where is it? And it flew probably 10 feet over my head. And I watched it as it went across the field into woods. And I ran for a little bit because I thought I'm gonna chase this thing, but once they were going, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna probably pass out in the middle of a field, and the farmer's gonna run me over. So
that's something that every beekeeper hopefully experiences, being right in the middle of a colony that's swarming, and they're all around you, and you get in this weird Zen peace thing, and all you can hear is you can hear them, you can smell them. Yep. And there's a feeling, there's an incredible vibe, just completely saturates the air, and it's one of the most beautiful things you can ever experience if you're lucky to. I guess if you just don't tend, you just maybe. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I'll go ahead.
We call it catching feelings. So you're catching the feelings of it. But yeah, it is. And I always notice, I know when they're going to do it. And like we get the majority of calls. It's right. I know, like I can tell when it's going to be a good swarm day because it's almost, there's a time of day that my phone will start to go off, and it's before a thunderstorm, typically, at least my experience, like I feel like if we have a thunderstorm in the evening, there's that it's like that change in the air. But when we've had swarms out here, like I just know, like, I'm like, oh yeah, we might end up getting a swarm today, or, or a phone.
Do you see the same with your other animals? It seems like some homesteaders develop it's hard to explain, and anyone who's listening, complete woo-woo warning. So if that freaks you out, just put it on pause for a minute. But when you are completely in tune with your soil and your water, the animals under your care, your bees, your food, you've developed. It's hard to explain unless you've been there, but you develop this hard to explain intuition with things that are going on. And I can't tell you how many times, and you guys have probably seen the same thing. You'll feel something's getting ready to happen, and you'll go out and look, and it happens right in front of you. Whether it's the bees, the cows, or even the pigs, So, and you'll get so you guys probably pick up something similar at your place too.
Yes, Like, I know I don't need to necessarily look at the weather to know that it's going to storm. I'll just go out and look at my cows. If my cows are laying down, I'm like, we're probably going to get rain. And sure enough, we get rain. So they're my weathermen.
Before we go on to the question, I just wanted to say, if you're interested in starting to become a part of catching those feelings and swarm catching, do yourself a favor. Put together yourself a little swarm bag. Yeah. You know, have frames ready to go. Have a an empty hive that you're going to be, know what you're going to do, because you're going to get these bees and now you've got to do something with them. So we typically will keep, a bucket with a net or a sheet in it. We will grab our bee suits. We will, I learned. Yeah. And then if you're going to catch them, try to get a little more information than, hey, we've got bees. Will you come get them?
Yes. Because this one, she's like, we got to go. There's a swarm in a tree. And I'm like, okay, do we need a ladder? Like, do we need, what do we like, how high up is it? Because I'm like, when I get calls, I'm like, send me a picture. How high up is it? Because most of the time, come swarm season, I have everything ready to go, but she was like, oh, we're good. Like, we had our suits, we had our stuff. This swarm was probably 20 feet up on a pine tree. All I had was a roll of duct tape and an extension cord. Okay, we completely MacGyvered that all the way, but we got it. But I'm like,
we ended up getting.
I was like, do we need a ladder? She's like, no. I'm like, I'm climbing this tree. I'm like,
we ended up getting 5.
Oh gosh, we got so many. We got called back to that neighborhood probably three times. Yep. 3 times.
And each swarm had like 4 or 5 queens in it.
And I was able to catch and separate, finding multiple queens in the swarms. And I was able to split, and basically get 2. Oh yeah, all the time. I think the most one we had, there was at least 4.
Yeah, we had 4 queens
in that swarm. But I only split it. We only split that one twice. I don't think.
Well, how's that possible? The books don't say that. The books. That's not what the books say. Swarms do. Are you sure you guys actually saw it? Can you trust your own eyes here? I mean,
think about it. Let's think about it. Okay, let's think about what happens with a swarm. Okay, you've got hopefully a queen. And then all the worker bees, and then the drones, everyone goes off and flies. It makes the most sense that there's multiple queens in a swarm, because what happens to that queen? What happens to the colony if that queen dies in the flight of a swarm? There's nothing to fall back on, So we've found multiple queens. I mean, it's the ability for them to survive. I actually, on one of my videos last year, I knew that a colony was probably going to swarm, and it was the same thing, that hair on the back of your neck perks up and you just feel like it's going to happen. And so I'm sitting there watching, I'm like, oh, okay, we're getting ready to start. And I literally was able to record the entire process of them starting to swarm. And as I'm sitting there watching it happen, 2 queens come out. So I catch both queens.
Wow.
And if you don't believe me, it's a video. So.
There you go. Yeah. There you go.
I usually ask, and I get quite a few swarm calls. I say, first of all, like you said, how high up is it? Where is it located? And I say, how big is it? What I mean by that is I'll say, to describe, I say, is it like a volleyball size, a softball size, a basketball size, a football size? That way people know, because how many times have you had people say, well, there's a couple of 100 bees, and there's 300 bees in a half a cup. So it's not that. But another little hack, and it sounds like you may have rigged up something similar to this on your high up catch, is I will take an extendable paint pole that you can extend out up to about 15 or 20 feet, and I attach a 5-gallon bucket on the end of it with duct tape, which is, you rig it up. And so I'm 6 feet tall, if I get up on a 6-foot ladder, and then I have like a 15-foot pole, I can get up 25, 30 feet up there, and I've gotten some hot swarms from way up in trees that way. And so that's kind of my little trick. And it's pretty cool. Bees are always an adventure. That's one thing I talk about on my channel. I had a couple of years ago, I had some bees that were checking out. They're trying to get in to my garage between my brick. And I'm like, you're not going to do that. So I sprayed it with Honey Be Gone. And then I set up, just went and got a swarm trap and put it on the trash can, probably about 8 or 10 feet away. And I was just out working on my fence in my backyard. And all of a sudden I heard this just huge buzzing sound. And these bees came up over my house. I don't think they were my bees because they came up over my house from their direction. And they went in and the swarm trap had a hole in the front. It was I think it's 1.5 inch hole. And they came in as they were entering. They were going in like in a rotating motion as they were going in. It was the coolest thing. They were just rotating and going in like this through that hole. It was one of the coolest things I've seen. And I was able to catch it on video. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got my phone. And I went over and I just recorded it and I was able to upload it to YouTube. But that was a fun, it's always an adventure. It's so much fun.
It is. And you can learn so much.
Go ahead.
You can definitely learn a lot from all the different swarms and be able to, experience all the types of swarms. I've definitely had some pretty crazy swarm stories. And yes, I mean, there is an art to it. But if you have that opportunity to like look for more queens, do it. If it's a big colony, you're going to have multiple queens in it.
Well, we've actually captured the queen.
Oh yeah.
And in the process of transferring, the bees to another one, and all of a sudden you hear another queen in the box.
They sing,
and you're like, wait a minute.
So I mean, so yeah, it makes the most sense. To be able to find multiple queens.
Do you guys have a thinking spot in the bee yard? Do you have a chair you guys put out there and just spend time just meditating, thinking, whatever you call it? For sure, yeah. What is it about those bees you think that there's a universal thing going on there? There's been some folks on here that we're involved with too, with the Hives for Heroes. There's something incredibly magical and therapeutic about the bees. And anytime you ask somebody, what is it? So I'll ask you guys, what is it about those bugs in a box? I mean, what is it?
So I can answer this one. I have a chatterbrain mind. So like my brain is always talkative, So one of the most beautiful things that I have found, so it takes a lot of practice for me to kind of, calm down and focus. So that has been one of the most beautiful things that I personally have found when I'm doing a hive inspection, because I have to practice to put everything out, that's going on around me out of my picture, and just so I can hone in and focus what's going on in front of me. So to me, I would say one of the most beautiful things that I've learned becoming a beekeeper and working with bees is I have really been able to hone in, and it's almost a state of meditation
For sure.
And it's just so therapeutic for me to be able to realize I have like my brain is quiet and I am just honing in on what I'm doing with my hands, and everything that I'm doing. So for me, beekeeping has become a form of therapy. Even if I get stung, which I do, it's okay.
You're catching a lot of feelings with that too.
Yep. It's really
those are the ones.
Strange. A few weeks ago, I did a video. We were moving bees to new pallets to send out to pollination, and the video, it was just wild. The bees were flying everywhere. We got stung a little bit, but they weren't really super. They looked angry, but they really weren't that angry. We got stung a few times, but just that whole, it's the vibe, it's the sound, it's just the smells, it's everything about it. Somebody mentioned that earlier on one of the comments, Stephen, the smells of the hive. It's just something about it that you just cannot describe. And it's not for everybody, but it is extremely therapeutic. Let me answer a quick question here. This Grammy midwife lives, I think she said she lives up in Ozark, which is just 20 miles from me. I actually have a few colonies in Ozark. She says, when could she begin grafting queens? I'll just say this real quick, and obviously this varies for people in other parts of the country. It's just going to be different for you, but technically you probably could start now, but the problem is here in this area, we'll have like a cool down lots of times into February, early March. And so if you start grafting queens right now and you have a big cold snap and the bees aren't flying, you can risk not getting the bees mated, or they might tear down those cells, if it's too cold or whatever. So I think the best time to really do it is to wait until mid to late March or even April down here to be sure it's going to be warm enough.
If we ask the herbalist here, they'd probably say something like, for us, it'd be after the forsythia, right at crabapple, but they're probably waiting on pollen, whatever your pollen source is. What is that?
Pollen sources have been one.
Start looking for the dandelions.
And then, well, actually, I don't do anything until I know that we've got the boys. I don't do anything until the boys. I start seeing the boys, and once I'm like, okay, we got the men in the house, then let's make them some ladies. But other than that, I just, I miss my boys. Yeah. I'm looking forward to my boys again, but yeah, we don't do anything until I see the boys.
Down here, we have drones pretty much year round, although obviously the numbers are beginning to increase dramatically now. But even in midwinter, we never have consistent cold for more than just a few days here. And so you'll see drones sometimes in December, January down here, but it's not, I mean, you don't want to graft queens in December, January, but they just kind of never, they like having the boys around down here most of the year, but not as many. But now I'm seeing just a bunch starting to build up. So we're really, really close.
Kaylee, what we have to deal with, at least Greg and I, what we have to deal with from this one over here is when it's 62 or whatever, and we have, 16 inches of snow coming, Greg and I will get a text, and it'll be, Bruce standing in the backyard with sunshine, and he's like, it's a little chilly. It's 58 right now. And I'm like, well, that's nice. It's negative 13 wind chill here, and he's, well, I'm going out to work the bees. And we're like, well, that's nice. I mean, I'm shoveling the driveway.
I sent him a picture of my flag. I don't know if you can see it. My flag in the sun out there. I send them pictures like that. They're Greg's up there driving around on his utility vehicle in like 2 feet of snow, feeding the milk cows, and I'm down here looking at my beautiful American flag at 68 degrees.
I know we just met the ladies here at the Honeystead, but this is the kind of, I feel like we can, it's only us four listening, right? That's what Fred Dunn says, right? So this thing, I'll tell you the kind of guy Bruce is. So Bruce is watching the weather, and he's just grinning. He's knowing we're getting ready to get slammed with ice and snow, and he knows he's got a forecast of like 75 degrees. He's out there in his flip-flops, having his coffee, he's checking his bees, and then he'll text me and Brian a photo. But here's the kicker: he'll ask us a serious question. He'll be like, "Guys, do you have any good recommendations for snow shovels for sunshine?" I'm like, "Come on, Bruce, get out of here with that nonsense." He likes to rub it in and just that's okay.
Hey, look right here. This is a good point right here. This Mariah says Bruce probably has to deal with a lot more hive beetles in the mild winters.
I don't know. They're creeping up in Ohio now, and hive beetles are going to. I think. Anyways, I don't want to bring a bunch of negativity into it, but things are changing rapidly.
Yes,
as far as the pest pressure and where we're seeing things that we never have, and how that's affecting the honeybees.
Do you guys deal with hive beetles up there in Virginia?
Yeah, we do have hive beetles, but I mean honestly, we keep our bees in a really nice sunny spot. We don't have them in shade, and there's a lot of people and things that I've been reading. A lot of people that have experienced a really bad hive beetle issue. They have their bees in the shade. And, so that looking at that might be something, but we'll do the mineral traps, the mineral oil traps on the side. That helps. And then the diatomaceous earth on the ground, that helps. And then the other thing that is the unscented Swiffer, little Swiffer cloths in the corner. Yep. Those catch really good. But I think the full sun has been really good for the bees.
It's interesting. I've got hives in all three types. I've got full shade, mostly full shade, partial shade, and sun. And it's interesting how I would say overall probably the full sun do better, but some bee yards don't have beetles much, and others, no matter what, just we loaded up with them. So it's interesting how one out yard will be just it's just. And last year they absolutely annihilated me, but I think a lot of it was I had some mite issues. I had some honeybound issues that where the hives got weak, and then the hive beetles will just wreak havoc if there's too much honey and not enough bees to cover that space.
Where my very first hive stand was, it was right on the edge of a tree line for woods. Now my hives, they're at my mom's place. And where I have them at now is they probably get, I would say, 4 or 5 more hours of sun throughout the day. There were a couple trees that she wanted cut down, so I cut those down, and it gave them so much more sun. The difference from where my stand was to now, I probably see half or maybe a third of the amount of hive beetles. So I don't really like it. Mine, some people, they'll say they go out to an inspection and they see 100 of them, and I'm like, well, I might see 100 in a year.
You can watch some of my videos.
Yeah, don't watch mine. You'll see 5-gallon buckets of hive beetle larvae. There's actually a pretty important. I think there's a good lesson here, though. We're talking about Brian and I are both in the state of Ohio, but if folks can learn to kind of craft and shape and develop their observational skills, that's probably the most important thing, because if you base your beekeeping just on what you hear Bruce say or Brian or me, and you take that as your gospel truth to your bee yard, you might be in for a real quick humbling. And I've tried to. I'm guilty of that. I've gotten really good at killing lots and lots of bees until I maybe got in tune with what I'm actually seeing, and try to do it in a way where you've got no ego, no pride. You're just looking at the thing, and then trying to get in tune with that, I think, seems to help. But similar to Bruce, I've seen colonies that are little 2 or 3 frame mating nukes in the shade, completely hive beetle free, and I've had colonies in doubles or triples that are completely ate up with it. And why that is, anyone's best. There's a load of different things that it could be, and we're in an area with really heavy clay, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. So the most important thing, I think, is to just don't get too attached to a certain modality or a method. And it's easy for us, especially as farmers and homesteaders. The cows get milked twice. We have a certain regiment. There's this and that, and you get comfortable in that kind of a more like habitual connection with something. And so if you get enough feedback with beekeeping, sometimes it's really easy to say, well, in the last 7 years, this has worked, so I'm going to keep doing it. That next year when it doesn't work, you have to learn to pivot and adapt and know exactly what you're looking at. Right. And so hopefully hive beetles don't become a big problem for everybody, but if they do, there's always going to be something. There's always something on the horizon. And that the lesson learned, I think, with all of us, talking about the differences, is just learn to observe and then adapt. And that's probably the name of the game.
I think that's important, that being fluid, to be able to make and adjust as need be. And it is important where you're getting your information from other beekeepers.
It might work, it might not. Right.
What's done in Florida may not work in Virginia, may not work in Ohio, and I don't know about Minnesota, but
I think the soil is interesting. That's interesting. It is a very interesting concept to actually look at. Do you have the soil that actually breed, the hive beetle? But it's kind of interesting.
Here's a good question here. Some of you homesteaders might have an answer for this, or maybe not. It says, for preparing flower crops for spring, how many acres to honeybees so that I don't harm the native bees in the area? What do you guys think about that?
Preparing flower crops for spring.
I don't know. We have a lot of trees around us, so a lot of our pollen and food sources for our bees come.
I think, it depends on what you're planting.
Yeah.
Like if you are wanting to plant more native plants, that's definitely not going to hurt the native bees at all.
Or any pollinator.
No, or any pollinator. But for us, like we don't technically grow a crop specifically for the bees. because we have such an abundance of trees, out here. So there's plenty for them to be able to forage on, because we talked about that. One tree is an acre of flowers.
I think people don't realize how many acres of ground bees cover, because if they fly, I think they'll fly even up to 3 miles, just say 1.5 miles, 2 miles. Yeah. Within it, that's a radius. So that's probably a 4 to 5 mile diameter. Mm-hmm. You think about all the acreage in there, all the trees, all the plants, everything in there. If there's some forage around, they're going to find it. And so I don't worry too much about that. There is a concern, I think, though, like, for example, where you do have a lot of pollination going on, areas like where they have the Tupelo down here, you have pollination going on in California and other parts of the country where you've got your native bees, your bumblebees, and others that if people are bringing in thousands of colonies, that can definitely hurt, I guess, some of the natural native bees, because there are so much population of honeybees. But for the most part, I think there's plenty of room for honeybees to forage. They will fly much further than a lot of the native bees. I know bumblebees won't go very far at all. Now, they're much better pollinators, but they don't go near as far. And so, and there's not the population of honeybees. And so that's kind of what I think about that, is there's plenty of, if there's stuff to forage on around, they're going to find it within a huge area. It's hard for us to comprehend how far they actually go.
Mm-hmm. They also create a lot of diversity to it. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, if I were to grow or want to plant something, I really do focus on the herbs, focus on the hyssop, focus on the basils, focus on the thyme, the oregano, the mints, mainly because it goes back to the volatile oils that the bees, when they get on the thyme, that volatile oil, the oils that are growing from that plant will actually get onto the bees. So then, going back to looking at the thymol that's actually in the thyme, and the cleaning process of the bees to help with the varroa mite. There's a lot of literature out there in that sense, but the herbs, one little plant can produce hundreds of flowers. So for me, I'd rather grow herbs because of that versus one flower. And herbs are beautiful, and you can cook with them. You can, do stuff, other stuff with the herbs.
Absolutely. And you got bees that helps with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly.
That diversity is huge.
Right.
The diversity with that is I think a lot of folks, there's a lot of, what's the right way to say that? There is a current push to kind of say that honeybees are destroying habitat and competing with native pollinators. That might be true in some very isolated occurrences when you're talking about monocultures and zero diversity, where there's probably little other pollinators to start. What I've seen here, at least at our scale, with 200 colonies or less, even in a 10-mile radius, is when we brought bees, the more we grow the bees, the more diversity we're seeing in things like you mentioned in perennials. So a lot of the clovers and the natural growing herbs are exploding. And what that does, now we're seeing more hummingbirds, more butterflies, more especially on the milkweed, more monarchs. It's an umbrella, and you start to see a lot more diversity that's helping a lot. We're seeing a lot more bumblebees, things in the garden. The garden's exploding. So I think if you just, the powers of observations, if you look around and you see, oh my gosh, look at all these different species that I'm not used to seeing after I brought a colony or 2 or 10 into a situation, that's a big thing to keep in mind, is they do create a lot of diversity.
The neighbor.
Sorry, I was going to add, I forgot who put this study out. I'm going to have to find it. But they actually researched keeping honeybees or even regular pollinators, mason bees or anything, adding those habitats to your area. But, a lot of people will think, oh, well, we'll have the pollination from the bees, and that's why everything's growing. But there was actually research out there. I want to find that article, but it actually talks about soil health. And what pollinators, what bringing the pollinators actually are doing to your area and it basically feeds that soil, and it brings that soil to such a much higher nutritional factor. When we added bees to this homestead, I didn't have the abundance of clover that I do now.
Same.
I'm looking at, I think of my bees as part of the homestead. Not just it's there, but it actually works it works together. My pastures are growing. So my chickens are eating, my cows are eating. I'm thinking about
it's a bigger picture.
Yeah, the bigger picture, and looking at the whole nutritional factor of your soil. I'm going to find that article, because it was a really beautifully written study. And just for me, observing our farm over the last so many years and seeing the abundance, seeing the wildlife, seeing all the perennials and everything start to grow. It is mind blowing. So if anyone here is getting ready to start bees, take pictures of your landscape now.
Oh, that's a good point.
And every year, take more pictures, and track it. You'll see it.
You'll see the biodiversity.
You'll see it.
When you're working with nature rather than against it, soil health, it just springs up, and soil health is the pivot point and the linchpin for everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was going to say, where my hives are at, my mom's neighbor, prior to there being the honeybees at my mom's place, they have fruit trees on their property, and they would maybe get enough. I think they have 14 or so different trees. They said they would maybe fill a little basket through the whole year. Now that the bees are there, they have so many that you'll walk over there now and they're on the ground, and they say, we have so many, so much fruit that we have on our trees now, we can't keep up with it. A property where I have a hive at, and they wanted a hive just for their garden. Here, they said, in over 20 years, they have not had the harvest that they did from the 1 year that the hive was literally sitting right at their garden. So it's amazing what the bees do.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's a question from Steve about insulated versus regular.
I have an insulated. Yeah. So I can answer that a little bit, just because I have a poly hive, and it's a thick. Oh my gosh, it's a company called Bee-Box. And what I've noticed with that hive is there's not as much bearding on the front of it. I think they can control the temperatures. Just they're more spot on as far as that temperature regulation. Also, in the wintertime, I have the little Govee sensors that are actually they're a humidor temperature and humidity sensor, and I put those in my hives. And when I look at those, I'll look at my regular Langstroth hives that are wooden, and then I look at the Bee-Box poly hive. And on the Langstroth hives, you'll see it's just every day it's like this, and you have that roller coaster of the temperatures. On that poly hive, it was practically a straight line across.
Wow.
And on the same days. And to me, I'm like, well, I mean, this is just this winter, but if each winter I see that, but I can definitely tell a difference in the bees' just behavior. So, and now I'm going to add in some Apame this year as well, and those are the insulated hives. So I'll be able to see how those do, but I like the poly hive. I do.
Kaylee, you guys got any experience with that, with the poly hives or the insulated hives?
No poly hives, no insulated hives. The main thing that we'll do here is we'll do a quilt box. We don't insulate. We don't do anything really. But
our temperatures fluctuate so much in this area. I mean, we can have
those insulated hives. Yeah, they're pretty cool.
In the wintertime, it's nothing to go, 10 degrees, and then the next day it could be 70 degrees. So what we've designed or what we've made are these quilt boxes, and that's just to try to help with that humidity, so it doesn't go through.
Yeah, because it's so fluctuate. But eventually, one of the things that we also do on this homestead is we operate my husband and my dad and my son, they all work together. We have a wood mill here. So I would love to be able to design a nice, thick hive design. And that's something that I'd like to play around with. I just don't think it's going to be this year. Might be a next year project. I've got a couple of ideas. I obviously have to be able to make it light enough or design it in a way to where I can actually still inspect it. I was looking at a couple of different ideas, but I wouldn't mind having a thicker
wall.
Yeah, thicker wall. So
what's really neat, going back to.
Go ahead. I do have an Apamay hive, which I think is well insulated, and I've had great. But down here, the temperatures, they do fluctuate, but I don't think I've seen as much bearding on in the summertime. I think we deal more with the heat than the cold issues, but and we need to probably start winding this thing down just a little bit. It's been going for a while. What amazes me with these live chats is that we'll kind of go up and up and up, and then right when we're getting ready to start ramping it down, more people jump on, and now we're up to 121. So you just hate to stop, but it's pretty cool. But anyway, this is a question for some of you, maybe up in Ohio or maybe over in Virginia. Was wondering if there's a plant that does well in very wet black soil, for example.
I think the herbalists will probably have. I've got some recommendations, but I bet these guys have some great plant recommendations for wet soil.
Well, I mean, I don't know as far as
like how wet.
Yeah, how wet. I mean, there's a lot of just around here, like the
jewelweed is one that we have a lot that grows around. And that's
the Virginia bluebells too.
Yeah,
that would grow. Lily of the valleys. I mean, there's a lot. I would probably in that scenario, I would tend to probably contact my cooperative extensions.
That's a good idea.
And ask them, ask them what I would tend to probably go more native with what, and that's going to be a resource that you might be able to, that they might be able to help you out with.
I'm trying to think. I know that I was reading one.
We mentioned one earlier. We talked about one earlier that in most parts of the country, the main one thing I learned from an early mentor, Mark Shepard. He's got a book called Restoration Agriculture. If anyone is interested in getting tuned in to the native landscape, it's a book that's well worth reading, because you learn when you're getting onto a homestead or a farm, you learn to read your landscape, and you actually you actually tune in to see what natives are growing here. I've got crabapple, I've got wild cherry, I've got wild pear, I've got so I could substitute those or graft onto those with the varietals that I want, knowing that those rootstocks actually do well. One that tends to grow in a lot of areas well, especially here in wet areas, that I'll see if you guys can figure it out. I'll give you some hints. Let's see. It has a lot of pollen, and if you put this plant on 1 acre, it produces so much pollen for the bees.
Yeah.
You can make syrup with it.
Elderberry.
Boom.
Yeah, we have.
Yep.
Yes, elderberry absolutely grows remarkably well. We have abundance.
It's so easy to propagate too.
Down.
Yep.
Yep, it absolutely is. That's probably what I'm going to be doing this weekend. Before cutting all my saplings and all of that. But yeah, absolutely elderberry. If you can grow it, I mean, a lot of people think it's a nuisance, but it's so good for you. It's good for the bees, and harvest the flowers, harvest the berries. Don't harvest all the flowers because you need the berries. But yeah, absolutely.
And try to find some old timers in your area that can show you grafting and propagating. Elderberry is one of the ones that, especially right now in Ohio, we can literally go right from last year's growth, the fresh growth, and cut it and stick it in the ground, and it's a new elderberry bush.
Yep.
I mean, it's nature has so much abundance there. We're so far removed from it. Finding some folks in your local area that can say, "Hey, look at this! It's food, it's medicine." The list goes on and on. You got to stop me, Bruce. I'll spend 2 hours talking about it.
Well, that's one reason we want to get you guys on, is just because you're just unique, and I knew Greg could talk your language. I grew up on a farm as well. I was pretty feral growing up too, but and my mom still lives up there. That's how Kaylee described herself. I was that. We lived in the woods.
I don't see any tusks yet.
We lived in the woods. I mean, that's what we just barefoot walking down the creek.
Yeah, just
an adventure down there, swinging on vines, and lucky we survived. All kinds of snakes and everything everywhere. But we were fortunate. I think we do need to probably start to wrap this up. It's just we could go all night, and it's just amazing to me, all the people. We really appreciate everyone who's jumped on here. It's been an incredibly fun evening. But you guys, Kaylee, if you now you have a website, you have an Etsy shop, right? And tell us a little bit about what you have, your website. Maybe Brian, you could pull that up, and we can kind of tell us what you got. Tell us what you got for sale that people can go and look at.
So definitely the Etsy shop. We are adding new tea blends trying to do every month. We sell out really fast. I think we had to throw together a few more of some of our tea blends.
Oh, that's the herbal quell.
Yeah, that is our herbal quell. That one was, I think I have 9 left. I tell you, that is we created that blend specifically for the things that are kind of going on right now, virus wise, flu season,
cold season, all
of that. So that one is a good tea blend. We're getting ready to probably put on the tea that we're drinking right now. We're finalizing a few more blends with it, things that we're going to add into it. The biggest thing is each herb causes an action in your body. So we want to make sure that action complements each other, so that we're not going to give you an upper and a downer at the same time. You don't want to be wired and then knocked out at the same time. So we do try to focus on complementing the herbs and picking the proper blend. We blend everything up here, and then we package it and get it out there. Next month, I did mention that we're going to start seeing clients or anyone who is interested over Zoom, so that we can kind of help the individuals, help whoever out that might be seeking advice or help, or just, somebody to talk to and get direction. We also have Hive tools up. And then the other things that we're probably going to start adding on is some tinctures that we've already, tinctures and salves sell out so fast. But that, it's pretty awesome to see that RBs can help out so many other people. Our honey, finally, I think I hold off, I'll sell a box or 2 boxes at a time, but I think we finally sold out of honey. Right. But that's okay, because we'll have more soon. And then I do have a website that I should probably be vlogging or putting my blogs on a little bit more. But for the most part, I mainly share on YouTube, and then Instagram is kind of like my behind the scenes. That's like my everyday, what's happening. And then lately,
Kaylee, you just got an order.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll be packaging them tomorrow. But yeah, we just try to share goodness, all the good and everything, and try to inspire, encourage, and to support. Yeah, it's not as scary. I mean, it can be scary, but it's not as scary. So
yeah, one thing that I quick question, and then I just before I ask the question, I thought Greg talks about the tug or the pull that people feel to do everything that we're all doing. And you mentioned that earlier, I think, when you were talking about why you're doing what you're doing on the homestead. Greg's got a homestead. He's doing things a little differently, but equally as tugged, if that is the correct terminology to go in that direction. Brian's got his pull, and I've got mine, and everyone on this chat is the same way. And I love the way that through these chats and through all this, we can encourage, help, and support each other. And but really quick before we close this thing out, I did have a question for you. You were mentioning salves and tinctures and stuff. Yeah. Obviously, we have a lot of beekeepers on here. What would you recommend for bee stings? Bee stings.
Well, honey, putting a dab of honey on it definitely does help draw the sting out. Okay. But we have one of our salves. What did we add to it? Oh, we made it
plantain.
Here. Was it the peppermint?
Oh, yeah, it did have plantain.
It
plantain
had
oil in
plantain,
it.
And I think we put
it was a little bit of tea tree, and then I think we did have a little comfrey into it.
Yeah, I think it was comfrey,
kind of concocted a little bit,
and tea tree.
Yeah, so good stuff. But plantain, I mean, if you can make it in a salve, make it in a salve. If you have it growing and you get a bee sting, take a chunk of it, chew on it, spit on it, and just walk away.
Greg, look at Greg. Look at Greg over there. Speaking Greg's language over there. Well, Greg, do you have any final thoughts or questions for them, Greg?
Well, I just really appreciate and love that you guys have such a beautiful spirit, sharing what you guys do with everybody else. A lot of us are young and we're blessed to be in a position to where we're in a place mentally and spiritually where we can pick up on the beauty that surrounds us. We're in a situation where a lot of folks are just completely, they're not in a place where they can appreciate that. And I appreciate that you guys are in a place where you are, and you can share that with folks to try to make that positive impact, make that difference in someone else's life, and to have a bee pun to literally be the change that you want to see in the world. So I just want to thank you guys for doing what you do, and looking forward to keeping up with you as time goes on.
Brian, you got any final thoughts or questions?
I don't. I mean, Kaylee knows how I feel about, her and her channel. I always, when people are asking, if they're, she's had a lot of new viewers and she's put out videos just explaining, what her channel, what her family's about. And I've just always said, it's just that positive, those positive vibes that she's always putting out there, always encouraging people. I go back to last year when I was not a beekeeper for 2 months, and there I am, and I see the latest video from the Honeystead, and she's shouting me out, and keep on keeping, and it just that means a lot, So I have nothing but positive things to say about Kaylee and her family.
So, Kaylee, what about you guys? Do you have any words of wisdom for us? I know you've got to have a saying that you say all the time, but you have any final thoughts for us?
I do. But I think that, we kind of spoke before the live started, but if we look at what we're doing as a colony, it's up to us to think in that hive mind. We have the greater good is to inspire and to encourage, because you don't know. I mean, there's a lot of just negativity in this world, and there's a lot of opportunities to break somebody down. But the one thing that I will never do, and because, I've been broken down many times, but why? Why am I going to break somebody down for doing what they're going to do? So, let's change that. Let's continue to build people up. And yes, beekeeping is extremely humbling. So, you guys have platforms, you guys have your people that you reach out to, and you have people that look to you and just continue to share that positivity, because there's enough in this world, and, right. And and our saying, is to not be afraid to get your hands dirty and learn something old. You can learn something new every day, but why not learn something old? It's been done. It's been shared. Let's remember that. That's where we came from. That's, barefoot and feral. So.
Absolutely. I love that. Me too. And I don't think we can end on a better note than that. So everybody out there, go if you are not familiar with Kaylee's channel, the Honeystead, or Greg's channel, Nature's Image Farm, Castle Hives, or or whatever, go out there and just check it out. And if you like what you see, subscribe and give them a thumbs up. And y'all take care, be safe, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Aww.
Night, guys.
Good night.